Everyone else may think that Mona Bretton is nearing the end of her life. But Mona will have none of it, even as family members arrive to ease her passage to the other side. That is the theme for this episode of Got a Story for You, and our tale is called Don't Go Fussin Over Me. It originally appeared in an anthology called Somewhere in the Middle of Eternity in 2014. This was book one of a series that I created and edited for Firebringer Press. It's an anthology series of speculative fiction stories, science fiction, fantasy, and paranormal, written mostly at that time by as yet unpublished or burgeoning writers. In 2016, we published a second volume called Elsewhere in the Middle of Eternity, and here we are in 2020, prepping to release book three. And I'll keep you posted on that as we prepare for the crowdfunding campaign coming soon. That'll be news for another time. And in fact, the next, I would say, 4 or 5 episodes of Got a Story for You will be readings from at least the first 2 books in the series. But for now, I hope you enjoy Don't Go Fussin' Over Me. At 93 and all of 5 feet 2 inches, Mona Bretton could still swing a mean rolling pin, which is precisely what she intended to do if her younger sister took one step closer. "Mona, I only want to help," Cassie said. She'd put on weight since Mona had last seen her, and she had orange hair. Orange! Good Lord, you'd think women would stop coloring their hair after 80. Hell, after 70. There was enough white showing in those roots to make her head look like a damn orange creamsicle. "Why?" Mona asked. "You haven't been around for 7 years. See, I still have all my marbles, don't need your help." "I'm just concerned about you, Mona." Cassie stepped back and took a seat at the far end of the sofa, staring at Mona with those big brown cow eyes. "Concerned about what you're going to get from my will, that's all you care about." "Mona, that's a miserable thing to say. I don't want anything from you. The truth is, I came here to make sure you were still able to take care of yourself." Mona sneered at her. "To see if I was dying, you mean?" Cassie folded her arms across her chest and tilted her head. "If that were the case, I would do everything I could to make you comfortable, to ease your passage. Remember, I was a hospice nurse for—" "Sorry to disappoint you, Cass. Ain't gonna be no passage anytime soon." Mona pointed to herself with the rolling pin. "Still got lots to do." "Mona, whether you like it or not, it's time to stop. I can feel it, so can you. As sisters, we've always had a bond. You've done all you need to." "How would you know?" "Bond my rear. You haven't been around for 7 years. See, my mind's still sharp." "You already said that." "What?" "Mona, why won't you let me help?" "Because when you slow down, you die. I'll go when I damn well please. Now, you know I don't like people fussing over me. The only person I ever let make a fuss over me was Talbot. God bless his soul forever, but I ain't ready to join him just yet. Now, it's getting late and I'm tired. You're welcome to spend the night here or see yourself out. Just so long as I don't have to put up with any more crap from you." "Clement!" Mona hobbled into the kitchen the following morning. She made her way past the table to the window and pushed the curtain aside. He was in the yard, trimming the barberries. Clement was a good man who had been in high school when Mona's husband hired him to cut the lawn once a week. 20 years later, Talbot was long gone, but Clement still came every week to tend to the grounds and work on the house when needed. He was the only one who still cared. "Clement, would you come in here, please?" After a moment, he towered over her in the kitchen. His red baseball cap was drenched. It was already 75 degrees out, and Clement was a husky fellow these days with a brown goatee. He barely resembled the kid that Mona remembered. "Well, good morning, Mrs. Bretton. What can I do for you?" "Actually, I want to do something for you, Clement. You've been kinder to me than anyone in my own worthless family. You've taken care of me and fixed just about everything in this house. So if you wouldn't mind driving me to my lawyer's office this afternoon, I'm having my will changed. When I'm gone, this house is all yours." Clement's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. It did that a few times before he finally spoke. "You sure, ma'am?" "My time on God's green earth is just about over, Clement. I can feel it. Your son is getting married next month." Well, his life's just starting, and this place could use some fresh air. Well, thank you, Mrs. Bretton. You've earned it, Clement. By the way, did you see my sister this morning? No, ma'am, but then I got here about an hour ago. Didn't see anyone. Good. Maybe I got rid of her. They always show up when you're near the end, Clement. Like vultures circling overhead, waiting to swoop down and pick you clean. Well, that's family for you, but they can't have something I'm not ready to give up. Mona tapped her chest. I'm still using it. You only have one sister, Cassie, right? One's enough. You said she was here? That's right. You feeling okay, Clement? Clement's eyes went wide and he gave her a long, exaggerated nod. I'm just fine, ma'am. He whipped his arm up and glanced at his watch. I need to finish the shrubs and then fix the gutter along the back before I take you to your lawyer. Mona watched Clement rush off and wondered just what the hell got into him all of a sudden. How you feeling, Mona? Talbot slid a muscular arm around her shoulders as they sat together on the porch swing. He placed another hand gently on her distended belly. They had been married for 2 years now, and despite pressure from both sides of the family, had decided to wait until they owned their own home before starting a family. It must be a boy. He sure kicks hard now and again. Mona leaned back, letting her head rest on Talbot's forearm. She thought of her mother. Of her 5 pregnancies, only 2 of the infants survived. Mona, the oldest, then Cassie. God bless her parents, though. They never stopped trying. I just hope everything's going to be okay. Of course it will. Our baby's going to be just fine and healthy. How do you know? Talbot reached beneath the collar of his undershirt and pulled out the sterling silver cross he'd worn ever since high school. I have it on the highest authority. He lifted the chain over his head and placed it over Mona's. Always remember the 2 of us who love you the most, me and God. Mona fingered the cross now lying against her chest. Will you love me as long as he will? Longer. Mrs. Bretton? Mona opened her eyes. Everything was blurry. She glanced up at the man standing over her. Talbot? No, ma'am, it's me, Clement. Are you okay? Clement? Who is it? Oh, right. I'm fine. Just a tired old biddy. Are you finished with those gutters, Clement? Oh, yes, ma'am. You ready to take me to my lawyer? Clement held out his hand to help her up from the swing. Car's right this way. I know where it is. It's my driveway, after all. At least for now. Wait till my kids find out they ain't getting the house. They're flying in tomorrow, you know. Better make yourself scarce the next few days, Clement. I'll call you if I need you. Wayne Bretton couldn't hope to be 1/10 the man his father had been. Still, Mona was proud of her boy. He made good money as a university professor in California. She only wished he had a damn spine. Maybe that's why Mona still thought of him as a boy. Never mind that he was 62 with a bald spot bordered by thick white hair. Truth be told, it was Wayne's second wife that rankled her, and if anyone was apt to tell the truth, it would be Mona. You haven't called in 4 months. Here and now, mother and son walked into the kitchen arm in arm. She looked up at him as he replied, and his height came from Talbot's side, but he seemed to tower over her now more than ever. It's because you shrunk, Mona, you shriveled old prune. I'm sorry, Mom, the semester was busy. Well, I'm glad you came by yourself and left her at home. I know you never cared much for Francine. I think the feeling's mutual. Every time she shows up here, she barely talks to me. And when she does, it's with that haughty attitude. Makes me want to slap her. You could have done better. Wayne sighed. Mona knew he'd heard it all before. We have a good marriage, Mom. I like Tanya better, though we all did. Her son clenched his jaw and dropped his gaze to the table. Mona knew her comment stung and immediately regretted it. But it was the truth. The whole family loved that girl. She got along with everyone no matter where she went. In all her years, Mona had never seen such a large turnout at a funeral. She knew Wayne still missed her. God, we sure had a lot of loss in this family. I was going to make some coffee or tea if you'd like some. That'd be nice, Mom. Where's Clement? Does he still work for you once in a while? Yes, but he's off today. Speaking of Clement, I have something to tell you. Went to my lawyer yesterday and changed my will. I'm leaving the house to him when I kick off. Wayne looked at her for a moment, its expression impenetrable. Now, before you go off the deep end, hear me out. You and Francine have it made, although you never gave me any grandkids, but that's okay. Sonia took care of that. I suspect she'll get her bra in a bunch when she finds out, but she and that snob writer she married don't give a damn about me or this house. You know how she is, little Miss Status Symbol all concerned about money and keeping up appearances. The plain truth is, I embarrass her. But Clement is poor. He's been out of work for 3 years. His son just got married and they need a place to live. Maybe Clement too. And he's here almost every day busting his hump. Wayne tapped his chin thoughtfully as she spoke. Then he raised his eyebrows and shrugged. Sounds good to me. I thought you'd raise Cain about it. I certainly don't need the place. So what prompted this little family reunion? Mona said as she put a full kettle on the stove. Well, I suppose it would be useless to say that we just wanted to surprise you. Clement called you, didn't he? I can honestly say he did not. Cassie, then. Wayne frowned. Your sister? She showed up here yesterday out of the blue, said she wanted to make me comfortable until I kick. Told me I should stop avoiding the inevitable and just lay down and die. She said that? Behind Mona. The kettle whistled softly. Well, not in so many words, but I got her meaning. I picked up that rolling pin on the counter there and threatened to whack her if she didn't get lost. She was gone the next day, left before Clement showed up. I don't like people fussing over me except for your daddy. Cassie ain't been around for 7 years. Why show up now? Wayne sat back in his chair. Its expression was the same as Clement's when Mona had told him about Cassie's visit. Did she say she'd be back? As if in response, the kettle began to screech. In the hallway outside her bedroom, Mona could hear the hushed tones of an argument. The voices drifted in and out. Or maybe that was just Mona. She was tired, after all. Sonia had only just arrived and was already irate. Wayne must have told her about Mona's decision regarding the house, inspiring Sonia to march upstairs to confront her. Wayne had stopped her before she could wake Mona from her afternoon nap. Can you blame her? Wayne said. It's not like we're around for her. Clement's been taking care of the place for almost 20 years. I know that, Wayne. I was just hoping she would leave something for her grandchildren. My son's publisher canceled his book series, and his wife was laid off a month later. With 3 kids, they could have used the money from the sale of the house. Mom left something for all of us in her will, Sonia, especially her grandchildren. I think she made the right decision with the house. It's less work for us. Look around. The town's fallen into depression. No one's buying here. This property would have been a thorn in our side for God knows how long. Of course, you're more than welcome to talk her out of it once she wakes up. What's the point? You know we can never get through to her. Well, perhaps things could have turned out better if we'd been closer to her over the years, before it was too late. This is no time for guilt trips, Wayne. I'm just saying that we should have done better when we had the time, instead of being embarrassed by... Don't start with me, Wayne. I have enough regrets right now. I wasn't embarrassed by Mom and Dad. I was just different from them. We both were. We're a different generation. Speaking of which, Mom said Cassie showed up? So she claimed. Well, she's been dead for what, 7 years? The two of them were never close to begin with. Why would Cassie show up now? Apparently, Cassie was aware that Mom was dying and just wanted to make her comfortable in her final days. Of course, Mom told her to get lost in typical Mona Bretton fashion. Skillet or meat tenderizer? Rolling pin. Oh, she's getting soft in her old age. Wayne paused. I just want to stick around and see if Cassie comes back. Oh, if she does, you can deal with her. The thought of that just gives me the creeps. Mona? She heard her name, barely louder than a whisper, and felt a gentle squeeze on her forearm. Talbot? No, it's Cassie. Mona opened her eyes. It was a momentous effort. She wanted to lift her head from the pillow, but settled for turning it to one side. It was the most she could muster. Cassie sat beside the bed, smiling warmly. Didn't think you'd get rid of me for too long, did you? Mona's throat was dry. Attempts to speak launched a brief coughing fit that caused both body and bed to shudder. Did Wayne let you up here? Her sister hesitated. Well, he didn't try to stop me. I heard them talking out there. I know Sonia would be upset about the house. Yeah, she'll get over it. Sonia's always been high-strung. Everyone's going to be fine, Mona. Don't you worry about a thing. I feel weak, shaky. I can't move. My arms and legs, so heavy. Cassie squeezed her arm. I know. Yeah, you always do. Mona let her eyes close. Where's Talbot? Again, Cassie paused. Downstairs. With Wayne? Yes, with Wayne. And Sonia? Yes, Mona. The family's all here. Clement. Here, ma'am. His voice came from somewhere, but she couldn't see him. She couldn't see anything as gray faded to black. Cassie, I don't have the energy. I know. I can't stay awake. I can't. You don't have to. Mona rested her head on his forearm, staring up at the violet impatiens in the hanging basket swaying in the spring breeze. She turned to look at her husband as the porch swing glided back and forth. A gust ruffled his thick black hair. Talbot smiled at her, young as the day they were married. On the table beside them, 4 glasses surrounded a pitcher of lemonade. 4. The kids, Mona said. Over here, Mom. She lifted her head to see Wayne and Sonia, neither of them older than 30, seated in the wicker chairs on the other side of the front door. Wayne's better half, Tanya, sat on his lap, sipping from her glass. All was as it should be. How are you feeling? Talbot asked. Mona lifted a hand to her chest and ran a finger down the length of the silver cross. Like I don't want to do anything. You don't have to. Not anymore. It's time to rest. Are you sure? I have it on the highest authority. Clement gently lowered Mona's arm to her side and slipped his fingers from her wrist. He hurried from the room and approached the head nurse, Bonnie. Mrs. Bretton's passed. Bonnie held up a finger while her eyes scanned the computer screen at the nurse's station. Finally, she looked up at him. Ah, Mrs. Bretton, right. She turned her attention back to the computer. After another moment of typing and clicking, she nodded. Okay, well, why don't you gather her belongings into a box while I page Dr. Rapalli? Thanks. You all right? He hesitated, wondering whether his thoughts would be wasted on Bonnie. Death had become just another standard operating procedure here. Still, she stared at him expectantly. Well, just yesterday she asked me to drive her to her lawyer to have her will changed. She wanted to leave me her house when she died. She thought I was still taking care of the place like I did when I was a kid. Didn't even remember I was her nurse. I drove her around the block a few times until she forgot why she was in the van. Well, I know what she meant to you. You've known her for decades. It was sweet of you to indulge her since you'd been here. You were a good friend for taking care of her funeral arrangements, too. She doesn't have anybody else. Her daughter died of leukemia 5 years ago, and her son was killed in a plane crash 4 months ago. If it weren't for all that, she'd probably still be going. I hope he's fussing over you now. Clement drew the sheet up over Mona's body. He stopped as his eyes came to rest on the silver cross between her thumb and forefinger. You deserve it, Mrs. Bretton. I have it on the highest authority.